Here's something we can all agree on. Injuries really suck. And they really suck when you get hurt when you're trying to exercise, when you're trying to do something to improve your health, improve your vitality, create some good habits, and bam, you get hurt. We're going to talk about how to start a resistance training program without getting hurt. This could be starting an exercise program for the first time, or rebooting an exercise if you've had some time off, or if you're coming back from an injury. My name is Aaron Shaw. I am your host. I'm a lifelong advocate of exercise and fitness, but I'm also well aware of the risks associated with exercise and the chances of getting injured in the process. I've been there, even though I can preach on ways to avoid it. I am human. I've been injured. And maybe this sounds familiar to you, where you start going to the gym or you start a new exercise routine. This even goes for cardiovascular exercises, especially running, where you finally get the motivation, the stars align, so you can get out, you can get to the gym, you can get on the treadmill, or you can start running outside. And after the first session, second session, maybe the first or second week, you realize, dang, man, my shoulder is starting to get sore, my ankle's starting to get sore. And you kind of get knocked out with an injury. And it is such a bummer. And it is such a halt to our pursuit of our health span. Our health span being that duration of time within our lifespan that we are healthy, active, and vibrant, and strong, and physically strong. And once we get an injury, we're knocked out for a while. I have written papers on the time frame for tissue to heal, and it is incredibly depressing on how long it takes what we would think is a simple tendonitis to recover. It can take months and months and months and months. And there it goes. Your best of intentions and you're knocked out. So today what we're going to do is talk about ways to prevent that. And specifically, we're going to be reviewing the phases or training blocks that we should be applying to our exercise routine. After I review the different phases, again, I'm going to skim through these pretty briefly. Then we'll go into a deep dive of exactly what this preparatory phase looks like. And the one action item that we're going to talk about today is how you can start this preparatory phase for yourself, this injury prevention phase for yourself. And again, this is great even if you've been exercising for a while and you want a little bit of a tune-up, you kind of want a fresh start, or if you're just trying to get yourself motivated to consistently do some resistance training, this is the way to go. So when we're done, you'll have specific exercises, specific sets, specific specific sets, specific repetitions to get you started on this preparatory phase for yourself. Before I dive too deeply into these phases, I want to be transparent here in that I have managed to cause my own tennis elbow because I skipped this preparatory phase. I've also managed to have a really bad sprain of my ankle from skipping this preparatory phase. And even though I know well and good what I should and shouldn't be doing, it is hard to do. And in hindsight, if I had started an exercise program with a thoughtful preparatory phase or an injury prevention type of phase, I never would have had tennis elbow. I never would have had an ankle or a brace on my boot for 4 weeks because of overloading. And so it's really important for me to share this with you so you don't make the same mistakes I do. Conversely, I want to give a shout out to my wife who today, as I record this, she did a half marathon today. So shout out to her. And she did it. Not only did she perform well, but equally important, she didn't get hurt through this phase because she was smarter than I am, and really did a consistent gradual ramp up, worked through a preparatory phase to make sure her body was able to tolerate proper load throughout her training program, and then to the point where today she did a half marathon. So there is proof in the pudding on both sides that preparatory phase, when done well, injury prevention phase does, you can get away with some great athletic performance without getting injured, or you can be a knucklehead like me on occasion and try to skip that step and then you get burned. So let's talk training phases, starting with the first phase, where I'll call it an assessment phase. Some people may not actually call this a phase, but I think it deserves it's more than just a one-shot deal to have an assessment of where you are with your current capacity. So a personal trainer or a coach should give you a period of time to assess your strength, your weaknesses, your mobility, your cardiovascular endurance, your muscular endurance, and really do this over a course of not just one single session where you do as many push-ups as you can possibly do, but over the course of several sessions, several workouts to really get a sense of how you perform overall. Match that physical performance with your personal unique goals and ambitions, and this is the part that often gets overlooked, an injury history. Have you ever had tendonitis anywhere, sprain or strain anywhere, a broken bone, anything that could possibly flare up as a well-intentioned exercise program will try to get you healthy, but it's certainly, if you have an old injury, it may flare up. So making sure that during this assessment phase of maybe a week or so, maybe 4 or 5 exercise sessions, you and or your trainer or coach can really assess, like, okay, here's where you're at. Nice baseline. Without a baseline, it's hard to brag about all your progress that you're going to make in the months to come. The next phase, the second phase, if you will, is the preparatory phase. Now, this phase, again, is a preparatory phase or an injury prevention phase, typically lasts 4 to 6 weeks. If you're returning to a strength training program after a fairly short amount of time off of a program, then you can probably do a 4-week preparatory phase. If it's been a while since you've had a strength training program, it would be better off if you did 4 to 6 weeks of this program, which I'm going to go into details shortly on what that is. But the main goal of this is to gradually increase the demands of your muscles and your tendons and your nervous system in a way that is not overloading it, but is stimulating it for loads to come, for stresses to come, for demands to come. And as I talked about before, with my own history of creating my own tendonitis, I kind of blew past this phase, and just went right into lifting heavy things, pushing heavy things, running really fast, running really hard, and I got my butt kicked by myself. So we're going to dive into exactly what that would look like for you. So you've done this assessment phase, you've done this preparatory phase, you've been wise. And now after the 4 to 6 weeks of the preparatory phase, we move into a hypertrophy phase, which is a block of time where, again, typically 4 to 6 weeks, ideally, would be a phase where the number of sets and repetitions that you do in an exercise with your exercises changes a little bit to specifically stimulate muscle growth size. Now, when I say the changes in muscle size, like this growth that happens, is pretty small on the scale of things. So if you're worried about becoming bulky, big and bulky, and that's not what you want, don't worry about it. When you see people who are incredibly muscled, that takes a ton of time, intention, and effort. Generally speaking, hypertrophy is going to be a lot less dramatic, but it will improve the size. When done well, it will improve the size of the muscles that we're going to ask to do work. After this hypertrophy phase, oftentimes we'll shift into a strength phase. This phase, again, 4 to 6 weeks long, typically. This phase is focused on higher resistance, lower repetitions, and more of a rest break in between sets. Because we're lifting heavier weights with more resistance, or bands perhaps, with more resistance, we're stimulating our body to lift heavy things, to produce a lot of force, which is awesome. The stronger you are, the more fit you essentially are. And as you may have heard me say before, physical weakness is a disability. Physical weakness is what leads to disability. It leads to us being unable to take care of ourselves as we get older. Now, moving on, this is where it gets to be very personalized as far as what next phase I often will work with my clients on. Often it's an endurance phase, so building stamina for time. It could be a power phase or a speed phase, and this is where it's very important that you're working with somebody that, or programming yourself in a way that is specific to your goals. If your goal is specifically for body composition, meaning percentage of muscle to fat, that would be the exercises and sets and repetitions that you'll be doing would be different than if your goal was to be better at playing pickleball or tennis or hiking or running or cycling or just trying to get the maximum amount of strength that you possibly can. All of those are very really depend upon what was determined during your assessment, what your goals are, what your limitations are. And that will dictate kind of this sort of phase. So now we've painted this picture where we have an assessment, we've done an injury prevention phase, we've done some exercises to make sure that we have the stamina to tolerate hypertrophy and proper strength training. We've done a block of endurance and some power and speed, depending on what our goals are. And when we look back, we can say, man, this has been a couple months where I've been consistently, thoughtfully putting demands on my body. My body's been responding. And then we transition back into what is often called a deloading zone or deloading phase or a transition phase. And really, I'd think of it as kind of redoing the preparatory phase, where the goal of the preparatory phase is to kind of give our tissue a chance to adapt. And in this case, since we've gone through a block of time where we've been pretty high demand on our tissue, it's a nice time to kind of quiet it down, make things a little bit easier again, give our tissue a chance to heal and recover from the demands we've had for the past few months. If your goal is to be healthier, to have an extended health span, to perform a specific activity in the next several months or several years, simply going to the gym or simply picking up heavy weights or resistance bands, moving them around until you're tired, is not going to be specific enough to meet your goals, and if not done well, may actually lead to injury, which we've already determined that sucks. So we're going to avoid that. So let's talk preparatory phase, the details of a preparatory phase. The emphasis of this preparatory phase would be for you if you are just coming off the couch, just getting back into the gym, or getting back to the gym for the first time ever, which is perfectly fine. You'd be starting in this preparatory phase. Or if you've been recently injured and you've had to take some time off and you haven't really been able to get back in the routine, you're going to want to start with a preparatory phase. Now, it doesn't matter how fit you were 6 or 8 weeks ago. If you've had a chunk of time off because of an injury or travel or life, you have to start with this preparatory phase, this injury prevention phase. The emphasis is going to be on learning or relearning proper movement and techniques for doing these exercises. The key is lower weights, higher repetitions with these exercises. The cool thing about doing these lighter weight, higher repetition exercises is that really one of the first things that we start training is our nervous system. We're teaching our nerves how to coordinate our muscles in a way that we want them to. If we jump right into heavy weights and heavy resistance, there's a good chance that our movement isn't going to be done very well. It's not going to be very fluid. And so what ends up happening is we have compensatory movements that happen, the wrong muscle doing the wrong job, pulling on the wrong tendon. Next thing you know, you've got rotator cuff tendonitis. The next thing you know, you've got an ankle tendonitis. So this first phase, what's excellent about it, one of the great results of doing a thoughtful preparatory phase is that your nervous system learns how to coordinate the movements that you want to do. Tendon adaptations are, to me, probably like the second best part of this injury prevention phase, because this is a tough pill to swallow, but our muscles develop, I kind of want to say, a lot faster than our tendons. Our muscles are quick to adapt. Our muscles have excellent blood flow, and when we ask them to do, higher and higher demand activities over time, they are quick to adapt. Those muscles attach to tendons, which attach to bone. Tendons are slowpokes. Tendons adapt much, much slower. So you may feel and literally have the horsepower to activate your muscles more with more resistance, but your tendons may not be ready. And this is where, again, if you're like me and you kind of push through that and ignore that, you're going to end up with a tennis elbow. But this is the key point of this injury prevention phase, is that we forcefully kind of slow down a little bit, give things a little bit more time, let your tissue adapt, give your body a chance to respond to the beautiful demands that you're putting upon it. So in a nutshell, this 4 to 6 week preparatory phase program is going to get your tendons ready for heavier loads. It's going to get your nervous system ready to coordinate movements better. You're going to have better body control, and you're lowering your risk for injury as the following weeks and days go on and you move on to the next phase of your strength training program. So here is the action. Here is your one thing to do today that will help extend your health span. That is going to be learning and applying a preparatory phase for yourself. And I'll describe this preparatory phase using 4 specific exercises. I'm going to give you a very specific number of sets and repetitions. And the caveat with this is it's a concept, not specifically for you if you have a certain injury or if you're at a different phase of your exercise program, or if you don't have access to some of these exercises, then take this as a concept. You can replace these exercises with pretty much any exercise that you feel comfortable with. So I'm going to refer to this as going to the gym. So you probably don't have these machines at your house. If you do, kudos to you. So let's say you're going to go to the gym, and the main purpose of going to the gym for the next 4 to 6 weeks is to identify a level of resistance with exercise that is medium, 5 on a 10 scale. No matter how much of a champion you feel like, 5 on a 10 scale, maybe 6 out of 10 scale at the most. That's it. Save the heavy grunt and groaning for next month, not this month. We're going to start with 4 exercises. 2 are going to be upper body, 2 are going to be lower body. This is the way I would suggest you coordinate your routine in an ideal world. So you would do 1 day of resistance training with the exercises I'm going to give you. The next day you would do a day of cardio, whatever floats your boat. It could be an erg, it could be a treadmill, it could be elliptical, it could be on a bike. And the third day is going to be a rest day. So it's resistance, cardio, rest, repeat. It's a 3-day cycle. Just keep going back and forth, back and forth. After 6 weeks, you're going to have 13 or 14 resistance training sessions that are going to be properly dosed. Again, this is the term dosed, meaning the right sets, reps, and resistance, that your tissue will adapt and be prepared for heavier things to come. If you are brand new to, or you've taken quite a bit of time off, and you're new to doing resistance training, I would like you to do 2 sets of at least 10 to 12 repetitions. So it's 10 to 12 repetitions where you lift the weight, then you put it down, and you wait for maybe 2 minutes. Then you pick it up again. That would be your second set. Do that 10 to 12 times. So you're going to take the first couple weeks and do 2 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions. If you feel comfortable with that after the first 2 weeks of doing 2 sets of 12, then you can bump it up to 3 or even 4 sets of 12 repetitions with medium resistance. Again, 5 on a 10 scale. Should feel very much within your capacity to do these. And just as a point here, I will be putting this in the show notes, so you'll be able to kind of scan through some of these numbers that I'm talking about. Now, setting the resistance for all of these exercises I'm going to explain to you should be, again, 5 on a 10 scale. You should be able to do 10 to 12 repetitions with really good form. If it's so light that you can do 20, I would say bump up the weight a little bit. But if you can't do 10 repetitions with only moderate effort, then I would say you need to lighten it up a little bit. So by number of repetition 10, you should feel that you've done it successfully. You feel your muscles working. You could do, maybe 2 or 3 more reps. That's great. That's the sweet spot right there. So you do 10 to 12 repetitions, medium effort. Absolutely, always and forever, never sacrifice form. So your form must be perfect every single time. If you start contorting your body to achieve 1 more repetition in any way, or if you feel a twinge in a weird spot, you're done. And in fact, at that point, I would say you've overstepped. You need to kind of back it up, get a mental note of what repetition that was or how much resistance it was, back it off a little bit. If you were starting from scratch, these are the 4 exercises I would suggest you start with in the gym. Number 1, a leg press machine. Leg press machine. If you are skilled and you've had the experience in lifting weights, fairly recently, you could do a squat. If you're not, then I would just stick with a leg press machine. Number 2, a dumbbell shoulder press, either from sitting or standing, which is where you take a dumbbell, you kind of rack it up by your shoulders, and you reach your hand up overhead, bring it back down, and you repeat. The third exercise, a Romanian deadlift. That's a weird word for a lot of people who aren't familiar with exercise. Check it out online. The reason why I wanted to do a Romanian deadlift is that it's a little bit less tension on the back, on your lower back, than often a standard deadlift, but it's a nice exercise to get the glutes, get the hamstrings. The fourth exercise is a lat pull down. So it's a bar that's overhead on a cable. You pull it down to your chest, not behind your head or behind your neck, to your chest. So we've got leg press, dumbbell shoulder press, Romanian deadlift, and a lat pull down. That's 2 upper body exercises. That's 2 lower body exercises. And if you do nothing other than those 4 exercises on the cadence of basically that'd be every 4 days, where you have resistance, where you would do those 4 exercises, you would do a cardio day, then you would take a day off, and you would go back and do those same exercises again. And if you did that with medium resistance only, if you're thoughtful and you're using good form, and you are focused mostly on how effortful things are and how good your form is, you have a low chance of getting hurt. The discipline really comes in when you start feeling a little sassy and want to throw on a little bit more weight, try a few more reps, and instead of medium resistance or medium effort, it starts to get pretty damn hard. And then you start pushing something really heavy for you or pulling something really heavy for you, and something doesn't feel right. And if you haven't gone through this phase, what you're basically doing at that point would be overloading a tendon. And again, firsthand experience, it will take weeks and months to heal sometimes. Not worth it. So now to reiterate, in my nearly 30 years as a therapist, I have treated so many people that have hurt themselves, despite trying to get themselves healthy, despite trying to squeeze in a workout, squeeze in time, take care of themselves for a change, and end up getting hurt because they skip this preparatory phase. It is essential. And even for me, I'm somebody who's gone to the gym off and on and certainly exercised in some way, shape, or form for decades now. I still have gone through periods where I've kind of skimmed over this preparatory phase and paid the price. It is not worth it. So you now understand that the preparatory phase is great for injury prevention. It gets your nervous system to be better coordinated on how to move. It gives your tendons time to gradually increase more stress. And again, I gave this example specifically for weightlifting. Same concept applies to running, especially running, which is a high risk activity as far as injury goes. And now you have 4 exercises that you can start rotating through every 3rd day: resistance, cardio, rest, repeat. And as long as you're doing medium resistance with 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 12 repetitions, you're setting yourself up perfectly for the next phase. Check out some other episodes because I'm going to dig into every phase of a really well thought out and well established exercise regime. And this goes for any person, any shape and size, no matter where you're at in your fitness journey, whether you've never done any of this before, or if you've been a strength training person for decades. We're adding vibrancy to our health span. We're extending our longevity, and then we cycle through them again. We're all bound by the laws of physiology. And as I tell my clients and my patients, I don't make the rules of physiology. I just happen to know what they are. I don't always follow them myself, and I pay the price. Same goes for you. We're all in this together. So with that, I hope you found this helpful. Please subscribe to this podcast. And if you know of anybody else who's interested in extending their health span, please share this with them. If you want a little bit more of a deep dive into topics around this, I will leave a link on how to sign up for my monthly newsletter that goes out to my VIP coaching clients. And until then, follow the preparatory phase, be healthy, extend your health span. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.